The benefits of tuning into our feminine power are abundant, and that's what we'll be talking about in today's episode. I am Pratna, and you're listening to Rebel with a Purpose. I'm so glad you tuned in to listen because today we'll be talking about techniques of manifestation, building an abundant and successful mindset, living in alignment with your soul's calling, as well as tuning into your intuition. I have invited a really special guest and a dear friend of mine, Eva, to talk about these topics with me. She is doing her PhD in psychology in SMU, and she was also my TA or teacher's assistant in a course called Mindfulness during my last semester at SMU. So let's get right into it. Hi, Eva. How are you doing?
Hi, Prathana. I am good.
I'm so glad that you're here to talk about this really important topic to the both of us. You're like the perfect person I know who I can discuss this with, and I truly vibe with you, so it would be a great conversation.
Yeah, I got so excited about the questions. I was like, yes, those are my questions.
Yeah, very spirituality inclined, which is great.
Mhm.
So just to start off, right, something a little bit, something that's everyone questions, which is about intuition and when to follow your intuition or inner calling. So what I
Mhm.
want to ask you is, do you
Mhm.
really believe in the power of intuition or having this sixth sense?
Mhm. Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think I do, of course, believe in it because I actually I think intuition is everyone has it, but I feel like it has a lot to do with feeling like the sensations in our body because oftentimes this intuition is this gut feeling, right? Intuition isn't something that's in our brain, nothing that feels rational. And I think the question whether it exists or not comes from the fact that we're so trained to analyze everything. Everything in our lives is so much on like intelligence and like thinking, right? To the point where we kind of oftentimes people lose their connection with their bodies. Like we're so much in our heads, we don't even necessarily notice how we feel. So our body's this like unfamiliar space. So then if it sends us signals, which is the intuition, right? We can't really make sense of it. So then it's like, oh, what is this weird feeling that I have? And it's hard to trust that if we're so much used to analyzing everything, because intuition by nature doesn't really translate into words sometimes, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
how I think
intuition is
about
like
it.
no conscious effort at all, right? Give me an example of when in your life you used your intuition to make a decision.
So intuition, often for me, this is a lot of interpersonal things. So when I think back at when I was hiring people for my work back in the day, I would have an immediate intuition. Like I would have an interview on the phone with somebody, and I don't know why, but the sound of their voice would immediately tell me like whether this is going to be a good hire or whether this is going to be an issue.
Mm.
And especially in these situations, it's really tough because it's like I have this feeling, but I have no information. I have never met this person. Like, how can I know? Right. And then so many times I question myself. I was like, I feel like this isn't going to work, but I don't have information other than that feeling. So I'm going to invite them in for an interview. We're going to invite them in for like a test work or something like that. And I tell you, like most of the time, like it was somehow that this first sense was sort of right.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
So it seems pretty useful.
Yeah.
But how would you say we can tune into this inner voice when we're so surrounded by, all the societal shoulds and, comparing ourselves with other people and all that noise around? How do you think we can be true to this inner voice?
Yeah, it's nice that you call it inner voice, right? Because it's something you can hear, but it's inside. So oftentimes it's too loud to hear it. So I think one way for me personally that helps a lot is intentionally sitting down and like reducing all the noise and all the distractions. And sometimes when I don't know how I feel or think about something, I sit in meditation or I sit down, in my mindful space somewhere on the floor, and I will bring up the thing that I'm wondering about, what I'm feeling about it when I'm not clear. I'll bring that thought up because you can intentionally think about things, right? Which is nice. So I bring it up and then I listen to how my body feels while I think about this, and that's sort of almost like a little navigation system, right? So because sometimes our thoughts do create these feelings inside of us, and if you are in a place where there's a lot going on around you, sometimes you don't know whether you're feeling this way because of the noises or because of of everything that's going on, or whether it's something that's really really like a real information. So I try to remove the distractions and sit with whatever, if it's about a person or a job or any sort of work project. I will sit with it and I will wonder, and I will bring it up, and I will then feel how I feel about it, and literally bring my attention to that. Okay, now I'm thinking about this person. I'm noticing tension in my belly. I'm noticing excitement. I'm noticing like space and like, calm feelings. So I'll try to do that in my meditations.
Mm. Yeah, the body really does keep a score of that.
Yeah.
But so as you said, you mentioned tension, right? And that could be probably a form of misalignment between your inner and outer world.
Mhm.
So when you face this misalignment, how do you refocus back to alignment?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of it's like an iterative process. I feel like, when you have
Okay.
like an algorithm and you're trying to optimize, right? And there will be errors. Like you'll engage in some interaction with somebody and you don't feel good, right? So for me, like for
Yeah.
example, I meet somebody, or I'm doing a task and I'm trying to decide whether this project is something I want to pursue. So I'll know I'm not sure. So while I do the project, I'll pay attention to how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and how I'm doing. And then after that, I will also reflect on the experience, right? Whether that's with a person or a piece of work. I'm like, how did this actually make me feel? How did I feel before, during, and how do I feel now? And then when I pay attention to that, the next time I can predict better. Okay, how do I think I'm going to feel? And then I check again. And the thing that's tricky sometimes is when we don't pay attention to how something makes us feel afterwards or during enough, then it becomes pretty hard to anticipate. So then we tend to continue to do things that maybe don't make us feel good just because we don't pay enough attention to those connections. So for me, like I've been practicing this a lot, like this year actually, after talking to somebody, really noticing how do I feel now? And then next time, if I don't feel good, really just deciding, okay, maybe if I'm getting invited to a meeting again, I maybe just say I don't want to go, because I know that it's probably not going to make me feel good. So in that way, but sometimes you don't know from the first time or the first few times, and the same with work, or maybe you think, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this kind of work. But you keep noticing how you feel as you go along, and then you can adjust, I think, better. Mm.
So I want to know, like, how do you persevere on this path? Because sometimes when we're just naturally just following these instincts or this inner calling, like you just said, which is great because I feel like very few people, have this ability to recognize it and put it into action also. But sometimes when you keep doing that, it upsets people in your life. And like because it's probably not in alignment with the norm.
Mm.
And then when you face that kind of resistance from the externality, how how do you deal with that if you have ever faced that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me
Or
think.
rather, how would you muster that like self-belief and courage when there are
Mm-hmm.
people around you that are doubting what you're doing, even though internally you feel like it's the right thing?
Yeah.
So how
So
do you keep going?
for me, like interestingly, with things that I do, that's not been such an issue. Well, like the resistance from the outside, it was I thought about this a lot. So when I was younger, it would be very early on, like for example, and it wouldn't be more family things, right? Where literally I wanted to study a certain subject and my dad wasn't supportive of it. So I didn't do it, right? But so that's how that happened in the beginning, which was obviously not so good because then like I ended up in a
Right.
subject that it was fine to study business. I just didn't really enjoy it in the beginning. But I think after that, I feel like I was just there was like the conviction was very strong inside of me that I don't want to feel this bad again after that one experience,
Yeah.
something I didn't like. It was quite intense, and I just always refused to be unhappy with something. I'm like, no, like if something doesn't feel like aligned with me, uh I didn't do it, I did something else. And I feel like the thing is, it's not been a lot in my life that other people have told me, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. And And if it did, I think it made enough sense to me always that it didn't matter as much. It was just a very, it was just very strong. Like if I knew, I knew. There was plenty of times where I didn't know, but whenever I really knew, um, it
Right.
just didn't, it really didn't matter. And I think it's almost like, and that's, I think, when you can tell something's really right for you, when that stuff from the outside doesn't affect you as much. It's sort of like
Yeah.
this is this interesting example of, like you walk into a room and somebody criticizes or is against something about you that you very deeply know that isn't true. For example, like I walk into the office and someone's like, oh man, like your blue hair really sucks. Like I don't think you should have blue hair. And I'm like convinced I don't have blue hair. So that comment isn't going to do anything to me because I know deep down I don't have blue hair. But if somebody comes and is criticizing something where I struggle with myself, where I'm not convinced of, for example, they'll be like, oh, are you sure you can do this? I feel like you're not smart enough for this. And if this is something
Mm.
I'm not convinced of myself, this is gonna throw me off,
Insecurity.
right? So I think whenever something throws you off, it's a sign to you that maybe you're not so sure there. And then you want to go into that and figure out, how do I become more convinced of this? Or maybe like this, maybe maybe they might have a point also, right? So it kind of depends.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. I think that can be applied in so many aspects of our life.
Mhm.
But yeah, like when you follow through with someone else's advice that probably doesn't align with you, and then you do that because of maybe fear of going through, maybe fear of following your own path, or again, as you said, like not being sure.
Mhm.
And then when you see that world or that situation and you're like, oh my God, I hate this. I hate being here. I don't like this at all. I feel so misaligned. And then when you switch paths and then you feel finally more safe, like your soul just feels more like at peace, then you're like, now I feel like I'm on the right path. Like now I feel like I'm on like a much better path than I was before. And then you realize I never want to go back there again. I
Yeah.
never want to do that again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that really, like that one experience of that bad experience actually gives you the strength to be like, no, I'm not going back there again, you know?
Mhm.
And then that's the decision that we take after we've had that. So I do think that the bad experience is important to get you to that state where you have full conviction that you would never go back there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why we don't learn from success, right? We only like we learn a little bit, but like if something goes really wrong and like makes us feel bad, that's where we learn if we take it as a lesson, you know? You
Yeah.
don't sit and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm miserable. Now I'm miserable forever. Like, no, it's like, oh, I'm miserable. I don't feel good. And so that's a sign for me that this isn't good and I need to do something
Yeah.
different. So yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, it's so important. Like those moments when something's really off, how else are you gonna know, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, listening to this conversation, I believe you have a few aligned goals or an aligned path that you are on right now.
Mhm.
But do you think that anything that's any fears holding you back from reaching maybe an ideal goal that you wanted to for years or something that you wanted to do, but it's just something, maybe the fear, maybe insecurity, something that's holding you back?
100%. Yeah. And when I read that question, I was like, yeah, the thing that's holding me back is literally, and this is gonna sound surprising because I know people get surprised when I say this, like the lack of self-confidence. Like I know that I deep down still don't believe I can do whatever I want to do, because if I believed it, I would be doing it. And this is the thing
Mm.
where the beliefs that we have deep down, the hidden ones that we don't even know that we have them ourselves, like those are the things that created the reality. So if you believe that you are going to be successful, like there is more chances that you are going to be successful versus if you deep down believe, you know what, like I don't think this is ever going to
Yeah.
work for me. And it's
Yeah, of course.
really, I don't know how this works, but it is just that way. So for me, yeah, I think I would already be doing more of what you're doing, like wanting to, like I've always wanted to coach people and I always wanted to be like somebody that does that kind of thing. And I just never thought I was like experienced enough, qualified enough, all of this. So and I think you have to then when you recognize this, you got to think about like, where does this come from, and when I was younger, I heard a lot of, oh, if you do this as a woman, no one's going to take you seriously. Oh, this is just happening to you because you look nice. So like this is all this stuff that's when you're young, it comes into your head and it's really hard to get out. Those sort of limiting beliefs, right? Yeah. So, and then it leads you, it does lead you to pursue certain things, right? I'm still in school. I'm still getting degrees and degrees and degrees because I need to prove to myself, not to anybody else, but to myself that I can do it, you know? And I have now, there is not more degrees. Like there is not a harder degree that I can do. So after this, I hope maybe this is going to tell me that I'm qualified enough. But you
Yeah.
realize at some point that it's not their degrees. It's like something on the inside, because there's people without any education that already do this thing and they just somehow think that they are qualified. And that's how then with that confidence that actually makes other people believe they're qualified. And then I think they are qualified, you know. It's not about so much the degrees and things. It's really about how you think about yourself,
Mm.
how you think you can do it.
But what if you're not actually qualified? Like, what if that's the truth?
Tricky. Yeah. I think if you're not actually qualified, it's going to come out. Like, because people, they'll notice, right? Like if you try to do something that you're not good at and not good for, like, and if you're trying to put that and show that to somebody, like the world is going to give you feedback, and you'll pick up on it. I think, yeah, it won't work out as well if you're not.
I think that stems from self-awareness in the sense that when I started coaching a year ago, I didn't feel qualified. But at the same time, there were two sides to it. There was one side of people who were like, she's so young, she doesn't have qualifications, what's she trying to do? There's another side of people saying, you don't believe in yourself enough. You are worth like billions of dollars. So you can, just go, you have so much value to give to this world. And then I was stuck there in the middle thinking, do I have value to give to this world? Am I being like, is this coming from some insecurity in the past? Is this a limiting belief that's holding me back? Or am I actually underqualified? After 1 year, I have come to the conclusion, which might also change, but right now I'm at this conclusion that I was actually underqualified. And now that I'm on this path of learning and developing skills, I feel that this is a much better path to take rather than coaching right off the bat for me. Because I did feel like a fraud. And then I kind of felt like I mistook the fraud, the feeling of being a fraud, for an imposter syndrome. But maybe that was the reality. And maybe maybe it was just me being smart about the fact that, well, I don't have any skills to coach another person, and it's someone else's mental wellness. And I want to be better. And I know I can be better. So I knew that there was a huge potential, which is why I started learning and started studying again and being like, I'm okay not earning the money right now. I'm okay to take this time to just invest in myself and learn. So that was a big step. But now that I'm doing it, I'm realizing that this was the right step, not the one I took last year. And as you said, like, you have to sometimes be on the wrong path to know where the right path is. You have to suffer to know where the pleasure is at. So it's like, it's really cool how this turned out to be in like at the end of it. But I do feel that's also one of the reasons I feel suffering is essential in life. Like, it has that purpose. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and I think what you're saying there is so important. I think it's kind of a unique thing with coaching, where that kind of work, anybody can do it, because it's such a it's a thing that you do based on your experience. So basically, if you're a coach, you are basically telling people how they can be better at life. So in order to do that, you need to figure out yourself how to be better at life. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot to be said for education in that space. And I also don't regret not having done it, because I feel now, I think everybody has their own internal sense of what is my minimum qualification that I think I require to do this. And of course, not done any therapy, or you've never done a coaching yourself, or you've never done a degree in it, or if there's no objective anything that qualifies you for it, obviously that should be a sign for you, and then that sense is fine. But there's this other thing where, if you objectively, for example, if I take a yoga teacher training, right, I take the training that everybody takes, and after that I still feel like, oh, I don't think I can do it, even though you've learned the thing. So we want to kind of understand, is this something where I actually lack experience, or do I have the education and I still feel like I can't do it? And there's that where we always like, we have the feeling, but you want to bring in the facts too. And
Right.
and that's the same as like a, you know, if you're a doctor and you're like, oh no, I'm going to do an operation now, but I didn't do the degree. So then obviously, like, if you're feeling qualified but you're objectively you're not, that's
Do you think we'll ever feel ready though?
so this is the thing. So I think for the coaching and also for the yoga, I remember before my very first class, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm literally on the mat. The people are coming into the classroom. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. And then I did it. And then it was fine. And everybody loved it. And I'm like, oh. So I think again here, like, you have a feeling, right, of this imposter syndrome thing. And if you have objectives, certain objective stuff, information that shows you should theoretically be able to do this, then I think to overcome the feeling that you're not ready, the only way you can do it is to prove to yourself that you're ready.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's definitely like experimentation
Yeah,
that could help
little
you.
by
That could,
little steps. Yeah.
yeah, it could help you draw that line between whether it's your reality, whether it's something that could be true, or whether it's, your thoughts just trying to manipulate you out of fear or out of an insecurity.
Right. You always want to get information, right? And if you're not ready and you do something, and then the feedback from the environment is, hey, this was really good, I enjoyed this, this was helpful, then you take note of that. You're like, okay, I did something that helped somebody. I did a class, I taught a yoga class and people liked it. So that's information to show me that I actually can do it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, like on the same lines, right, with regards to affirmations and like how our belief systems create reality, what do you think certain beliefs would apply to everyone irrespective of their circumstance? For example, let me give you a money affirmation, which is that money flows to me easily, is the affirmation. But if someone who isn't very well off reads that, and they've grown up with a mindset that it's been because obviously seeing your parents, seeing your family struggle with money throughout your childhood, and then reading that on the internet, which is pretty widespread with these affirmations, that could be a trigger, right? And then that could also be like, no, that doesn't work for people who are not well off, because we have to do a lot more for us to believe, or for us to even have money flow easily to us.
Yeah.
So do you think that could be applied to people who are not well off also? Like, do you think if they had that belief system that money is abundant and I attract money easily, do you think if someone who didn't have a lot of money believes that, they would be able to generate more money, like maybe a lot more?
I read so many books on this last year, and I know that you're doing this now, and this is with all the things with the beliefs, right? What is the appropriate person to bring this, like, to bring this kind of a suggestion to, and like how to think, right? Because it's all about like, what is a helpful thought? And it can almost be offensive, right, to somebody who has had such hardship, to be like, oh, you know what? You just imagine that money comes easily, and then it's going to come easily to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. How to reconcile that is I think it's not an easy answer to give to that. I do to a certain degree think it might be supportive of changing the behavior towards like something that might help them make more money. But I don't think that that you can suddenly, coming from, because realistically speaking, of course there's always outliers, people who came from nothing and worked really hard and made a lot of money. But I do think that if the odds are stacked against you, obviously it's gonna be harder. I don't think that it's like a pill. Suddenly you have a different mindset, and then all the obstacles that are in your life are going to dissolve. I don't think so. I just think that if you think about probabilities, the likelihood of you making it with coming from a poor situation is quite low, right? So you might be able to increase your odds by changing your mindset, but that doesn't mean that you're suddenly on the same level as like a trust fund baby, you know. That's just not how that works. You're always at you cannot suddenly change your baseline, but you can maybe change the slope, right? Maybe if you're poor and you believe I'm going to be poor forever, you might stay there. And but then there's a rich person, right? So they'll never be on the same level, but like it might be easier for you to get up if you change your mindset. So that's maybe that. And just making that clear to people when you talk to them about it, it's like it's not going to suddenly be as easy as it is for someone from money, but it might be easier compared to if you stayed in your like more limiting belief about money.
Right. Yeah, it might be easier with just a better mindset on it, even though it might be harder for people who are poor to have that mindset. Yeah,
there's
I
just
see how that
more
goes.
resistance, you know, and that's unfortunate. And like no one starts in the same spot, unfortunately. And for some people, it's always going to be easier. You know, there's people that they don't have to work because their parents just, you know, worked and then they were very successful. So yeah, and there's obviously for these people to make a lot of money, it's going to be so much easier. And then if these people believe money is going to flow easily, then like, yeah, it's not fair. And I don't think we should. Yeah, life just isn't fair like that, unfortunately. But there's always something we can do, I think, with our mind to make things work out better, no matter where we're at.
So talking about our mind, do you believe in manifestation? Do you practice it? And if so, how do you do it?
Yeah, this is such a spiritual question. People look so weird at you when you talk about manifesting. I totally believe in it, you know, like obviously I believe in it. Because for certain things, because I think if you manifest, and this is where it's weird, like if you manifest something that is the right thing for you, I do think that kind of process of just envisioning it is going to help you get there. But sometimes we think we can manifest anything, but there's this other part where I believe that certain things are or are not meant for us. And if it's just really not the right thing, then rejection is protection, you know, like sometimes yeah, we can't manifest just anything really. Maybe it's really a tricky thing, but like I remember I have these little cards, like, so like I have this weird thing that I do, right, where like when I really want something and I know I want it, I will like write it on these like sticky notes and I will like put it on my wall. I don't put a lot on my wall, but certain things. So this one says, I will do a yoga PhD in 2020. This is when I decided after being a yoga teacher, I'm going to be a PhD. Like I'm going to do a PhD and I'm going to do it in like something yoga. So like the mindfulness thing. And yeah, this thing happened. And there was a few other of these notes that I wrote and I put them on my wall and like they just happened, you know? Yeah, which is why I do believe in it to a degree. And, you know, there's a lot of other evidence for how this could work. Like if you can dream it, you can do it. And yeah, I think I thought about this recently a lot. Like I think as humans, we're such creators. I don't think we understand the power that our imagination has on creating reality. Like we made devices that you can talk through thin air to somebody on the other side of the planet, just because somebody someday envisioned that might be possible. Or like world records are the same, right? Where somebody, like everybody runs a certain speed. There's a top speed for 100 meters, right? And nobody runs faster than that until somebody suddenly runs faster. And then all these other people also, the records, like the first time a record gets broken, after that, suddenly everyone breaks this record because suddenly we believe that it's possible. So with this manifestation thing, I feel like it's a lot about like just imagining something, and if you can imagine it, it's possible. Yeah, it seems that it is. If you think about all of this stuff that humans came up with, it's hard to believe. It's hard to not believe in manifestation or imagination and the power of that. Just looking at the world and like the stuff that we created out of literally nothing, you know.
Totally. And one tip could also be like, instead of manifesting something like large that could probably be overwhelming for someone who still doesn't have like strong belief in manifestation, in order to increase that belief, because to be honest, manifestation is a empowering belief that serves us. And
Mm-hmm.
since we can choose our beliefs, why not choose to believe in manifestation if it's going to end up serving you?
Yeah.
So I feel like people could like try to manifest something small, something very insignificant, so that whether they get it, because they're not coming from an energy of desperation when they're manifesting something small. They're just like, whether it comes or not, it's not going to make much of a difference to my life. And then when that thing does manifest, they're like, wait, I thought about this like 2 weeks ago and now it's here. And
Yeah.
then they start believing in the power of manifestation. And that happened with me. I didn't believe in it a year and a half ago. And I started doing small manifestations and
Like
it
what?
came true. I manifested a free iced mojito. How, like, it's not even that common, a free iced mint mojito. And literally 2 weeks later, I was in a mojito class where I made my own free iced mint
Oh my,
mojito.
and see, this is the stuff, man. Like little things like that. Yeah, and I think it for me it was the same with like people. So when like I said to somebody, oh, you know what, like the people that are most like me, I know them they're on Instagram. Like nobody in my life has the exact same thoughts and values as me. I have good friends and all of that, but like some of the spiritual things or like the health stuff, like there's just no one like me that shares my beliefs in that way in my life. And so then I made the intention, which is similar to manifesting, right? I was like, I want to have more people in my life that I can really relate to. And then like I'm talking to you right now. Like we are like there's so much that we think similarly about. And that came after I said that. And there's like there's like 3 people who are ridiculously aligned with how I think, where yeah, they just came into my life after I decided, you know what, like I just want more aligned people in my life. It's not, I don't need a
Yeah.
football team, right? But like a few, just so that you don't feel so weird. And this is it's a little thing, but yeah, I think it does. I don't know how it works, but I like to think that there's some magic, that we don't understand everything. So I do think it works, even though we don't understand why it works. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like everything is energy. So
Mm,
our thoughts are also energy. I mean, every single thing, atoms are energy. So
yeah.
I feel like it's everything is connected to energy. Even like the money affirmation we were talking about, money is energy,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my belief. So to me, like I see how, okay, manifestation does make some sense. And also like in life, because of the evidences that my mind has created, it's been like, oh wow, like this is what my mind can do solely by believing. And like today, someone told me that you're so lucky, you've attracted so many people who seem to be spiritual. I was talking to my aunt, who's also, she's a yoga teacher, and
Oh.
she's also really spiritual. And then she was
Mm.
talking to me about how, because I was telling her a few experiences that have happened recently, and she's like, it's so lucky that you've come across these people who are so spiritually inclined and who vibe with you. They're on the same frequency as you. And I said that, yeah, it's been cool because initially I never did attract people like this, and now I'm bumping into coaches, like I'm going for a family dinner and I see a coach and I'm like, oh my God, like it's like there are more people firstly who are raising in awareness on a spirituality front, people
Mhm.
who are more curious about life and spirituality. And then secondly, there are more people that I'm attracting into my life because I'm tuning into this truth of me being a spiritual person and me accepting it fully, which is why I feel like that acceptance and that love that I'm giving this self of mine is kind of attracting more people like this. So
Yeah.
I think, I mean, that's how it makes sense to me, and I see how the change in my belief and how I've looked at myself as a person has changed with regards to the kind of people I'm attracting in my life.
Yeah, so I definitely have the same experience, and from all the books that I've read, we're not the only people that have this experience of that. And
Yeah,
it's just like I was at a family dinner also, yes, when was this? 2 days ago? Yeah, 2 days ago.
yeah,
And I'm like a little bit of the odd man out because I travel and I live in different place and I don't live in Germany and in a small town and all of that. And like I always, so now for example, my I always wanted to live where it's warm. I wanted to live on the ocean. And I always rejected the idea of a 9 to 5 job somewhere. I wanted to work somewhere where I can take my laptop and work there. And the dream
yeah,
was to spend 6 months in some place and 6 months in the other, ideally on the ocean where it's warm. So, and now, like 5 months I lived in Singapore because it was shitty weather in Europe. And now that it's May, end of May, I go back to Europe. And I'm in Germany. Well, it's nice, but it's not the ocean. So I met this professor, and now I'm going to Portugal. I'm going to live in Portugal the rest of the year until it gets cold in Europe again until end of October. And then my aunt is asking, so where you go after that? I'm like, you know what? Like, I think I'm gonna like live in Bali for 2 months before I go back to Singapore. And everyone's like, what the heck with this lady? But I knew in my head that what I want in my life is I want to have that kind of freedom to live in the place where it's sunny and warm and there's the ocean. And I do think it's not that didn't happen when I was 23, right? Even though at 23, I already believed that that's what I kind of wanted. Sometimes it takes just a long time, but I do think that if we see our life in this way, we're gonna make decisions that lead us to the places where that kind of a life becomes possible, because we're gonna say no to other options where it won't lead us into that direction, right? So while it's not immediately, eventually I do think that stuff kind of evolves in a way that's aligned with what you envision. It just doesn't, it's not on your timeline, but I do think that eventually that image that you have in your head, it does sort of, it can become the reality.
No, same. I have this vision of me living in Bali by the ocean because of the weather, and also the weather is extremely hot, but at the same time I prefer hot over cold.
Me
And also
too.
the ocean, I love the water, and I love that Bali is known for yoga and surfing, the two things I love. So it's like that's my vision. And a lot of people people have asked me, and like, where do you see yourself 10 years down the line? And I'm like, probably in Bali, like in my rented a house, or hopefully my own house, but on the shore. So these are like my visions. It's literally on my vision board in my shower. But I believe in it so strongly, and I feel like I know I'm going to get there. Like that is my part, because I align with it. Like as you said, when you're manifesting something that feels aligned, you also have a higher faith. And also just surrendering and having the trust in the universe, that kind of gives you that ease that I will be patient now, even if I don't have it right now. Like I will be patient because that is for me. That's going to come if I'm patient right now.
If you feel like you're on the path and you're going into the right direction, it doesn't really matter where you are on the track. If you know that that's the right path into the right direction to the right destination, you don't have to rush to the destination, because you just know, okay, like I'm on track towards the goal that I'm looking for. Like the tricky part is when you feel like you're walking into the wrong direction. I think that's when it becomes tough. But as long as you know that while you're not where you want to be, you're on the way there. Like that's like I love that place. Like that's such a good place to be in, I think.
Yeah, no, I shouldn't put that number, because I know when I'm 30, I'm going to be like, I can fuck it up till 40. And then,
honestly, like
I know
that happens. It happens. It happens. But it's okay. Like it's fine, because it's time is something we made up as humans, right? So Oh, I'm losing your voice somehow.
Can you hear me?
You're back. Now you're back. Yes. Say?
No, I believe the process is the destination. I believe that as long as you're enjoying the process, nothing else matters, because life is happening in the now, and in the now you're in the process, and you're always going to be in the process of figuring it out. You're never going to have it all figured out. So the process is life. So the process is the destination. That's
exactly. Yeah, we say there's a German saying for this too. And I think your question was, how can you be happy and still strive for more, right? And I do that's literally the answer to that. It's like, can you be grateful and happy and enjoy right now while you know that you're not where you want to be, but because you're happy in the moment, you have the strength and the power and the endurance to get to where you want to go. Whereas if we're not cultivating gratefulness and gratitude and happiness in the present moment, I don't think that we can make it as far, because it's just very exhausting. So I think it's really important to like stay and be in the moment and like enjoy that, because that's giving you the energy to keep going. So I think that's how you balance that, right? Where there was this really nice book that I'm listening to. Do you know like Brene Brown? I hope you know her. If you don't know her, you have to know. So The Atlas of the Heart, and she was talking about gratitude, and there is this interesting thing of when people are worried that when they're happy, they become complacent and they lose their motivation, which is this thing of like, if I'm happy, like I'm not going to have motivation. And then when you cultivate gratitude, which is just being grateful for where you're at, you actually don't get used to the happiness, but the happiness gives you energy. So the important thing if you're happy is just practicing gratitude so that it can give you energy to kind of move forward. Because if you take everything for granted, then it's like that's a quite different energy. Yeah, it's a counterintuitive, right? Like if you first think about it, it's like, well, that's a paradox. Like I don't think both at the same time work. But if we think about it usually a little bit harder, then we see that a lot of paradoxes, it's not an either or, it's usually an and, right? It's like I don't have to choose between being happy right now and being happy in the future. I can, or wanting to go further in the future, I can have both, right? And there's some interesting paradox research also that shows that people that are more successful, they have this end thought, where a lot of entrepreneurs actually, like, they don't believe you have to choose money or happiness, or there's no or for a lot of successful people. It's always like you can have both.
I really love that. Thank you so much.
You're
But I
welcome.
really enjoyed this conversation with you. I think we covered a lot in this, and it's really, really useful information. So thank you so much for your time, Eva.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Never
Same
enough
here.
time.
And I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.
That's the end of this episode, and I really hope you enjoyed it and had some great takeaways from it. You're listening to Rebel with a Purpose, and I'm Pratna, signing off.